Picture this moment. A 23-year-old sits across from you at a coffee shop. Tears stream down their face. Not because someone died, not because of a tragedy, but because their boss asked them to redo a presentation. This isn't rare anymore. It's Tuesday. Walk into any university counselling centre today and you'll find waiting rooms packed with students who can't sleep because they got a B-. Young professionals having panic attacks over constructive feedback. Adults who've never experienced real hardship completely paralysed by minor setbacks. Something fundamental has broken in how we prepare humans for life. Recent data reveals a startling pattern. Mental health diagnoses among young adults have exploded by over 250% in the last 15 years. But here's the twist. Actual trauma rates haven't increased. Life hasn't gotten objectively harder. Wars are fewer. Poverty is declining. Child mortality has plummeted. So why is this generation drowning in psychological distress over challenges their grandparents barely noticed? The answer isn't what you think. This isn't about weak character or entitled attitudes. This is about something far more sinister. We've accidentally created the perfect psychological storm. And the truly terrifying part? We did it with love. Today, we're diving into how good intentions created catastrophic outcomes, how protection became poison, how love transformed into suffocation. Let's travel back to 1985. A typical childhood looked radically different. Kids left the house after breakfast and returned when streetlights came on. Parents had no idea where they were. No tracking apps, no constant texting, no scheduled play dates with supervising adults. Children fought with other kids and worked it out themselves. They climbed trees and sometimes fell. They tried things, failed spectacularly, and figured out solutions without adult intervention. Then something shifted. The transformation started subtly in the late 80s and accelerated through the 90s. News media discovered that frightening parents was profitable. Missing children on milk cartons. Stranger danger campaigns. Sensationalized crime stories that made parents believe danger lurked everywhere. The statistics told a different story. Child abduction by strangers was incredibly rare. Neighborhoods were actually becoming safer, but perception diverged from reality. Parents who grew up with freedom became terrified of giving their children that same freedom. Psychologist Wendy Mogul observed this shift firsthand. She watched as her practice filled with anxious parents obsessing over every aspect of their children's lives. These weren't neglectful parents. They were intensely involved, too involved. She noticed something peculiar. The more these parents tried to protect their children from any discomfort, the more anxious and incapable those children became. But nobody connected the dots. Protection felt like love. Involvement felt like good parenting. The idea that you could damage children by caring too much seemed impossible. By 2000, a new parenting philosophy had crystallized. Every decision became high stakes. Every choice could determine whether your child succeeded or failed in life. Preschool selection mattered as much as college selection. Summer camp wasn't fun. It was resume building. Childhood became a project to be managed rather than experienced. Author Jennifer Senior captured this perfectly. Modern parents haven't just started parenting differently. They've changed what parenting means. It's shifted from raising independent adults to curating childhood experiences. The average parent in 2010 spent 3 times as many hours supervising their children as parents did in 1975. Not because they had more time, they made time by sacrificing sleep, hobbies, relationships. This might sound noble. Dedicated parents putting children first. But here's what nobody anticipated. Children need struggle more than they need safety. They need failure more than they need success. They need independence more than they need involvement. When we eliminated struggle, we eliminated the exact experiences that build psychological strength. Think about weight training. Muscles grow through stress and recovery. You damage muscle fibers, they repair stronger. Without stress, they atrophy. Psychological resilience works identically. Stress and recovery build mental strength. Without challenges, the psyche withers. We created an entire generation of psychologically atrophied humans, and we called it good parenting. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's getting worse. A landmark study from San Diego State University tracked mental health trends across 3 decades. Professor Jean Twenge analysed data from over 8 million adolescents and adults. The findings are devastating. Depression rates among adolescents increased by 63% between 2005 and 2017. Psychological distress and suicide-related outcomes among young adults doubled in the same period. This isn't a small blip. This is a mental health catastrophe. But what's causing it? Researchers initially looked at obvious culprits: economic stress, academic pressure, social media. Those factors matter, but they don't explain the full picture. Dr. Peter Gray from Boston College identified something deeper. He studied the decline of free play in children's lives, unstructured, unsupervised play, where kids make their own rules and resolve their own conflicts. In 1981, children spent an average of 52 hours per week in free play. By 2017, 14 hours. That's a 73% decrease in the exact activity that teaches emotional regulation, conflict resolution, risk assessment, and resilience. Gray's research revealed something remarkable. Every measure of childhood independence declined in perfect correlation with increases in anxiety and depression. As parents increased supervision and decreased independence, mental health deteriorated proportionally. But it gets more interesting. Researchers at University College London conducted experiments on rats. They raised some rats in enriched environments with challenges and opportunities to explore. Other rats grew up in safe but unstimulating environments with everything provided. When both groups faced novel challenges, the results were stark. Rats raised with challenges adapted quickly. Rats raised in protected environments showed anxiety behaviours and struggled to cope. The parallel to human development is exact. A comprehensive analysis from Cambridge University examined resilience development. They found that exposure to manageable stresses between ages 5 and 15 creates what they call stress inoculation. Small doses of adversity train the nervous system to regulate stress responses. Children who never experience manageable stress don't develop this capacity. Their nervous systems remain hypersensitive. Minor challenges trigger massive stress responses. Imagine someone who's never exercised trying to run a marathon. Their cardiovascular system hasn't adapted. They'll collapse. That's what we've done to psychological development. Even more revealing, longitudinal studies track children of so-called helicopter parents into adulthood. The outcomes are consistent and troubling. These young adults demonstrate significantly higher rates of depression and anxiety. They report lower life satisfaction. They struggle with decision-making. They experience more conflicts in romantic relationships. They have difficulty maintaining employment. But here's the kicker. They also show lower academic achievement despite parents' intense focus on academic success. The very outcomes parents tried to ensure through over-involvement are undermined by over-involvement itself. A Yale University study found something particularly disturbing. College students with overly involved parents showed impaired executive function. The brain's ability to plan, organize, and solve problems was literally underdeveloped. Because parents always solved problems for them, the neural pathways for problem solving never fully formed. It's not metaphorical weakness. It's measurable neurological underdevelopment. Think about that. We literally change brain development by removing challenge from childhood. Here's where it gets truly disturbing. The more we tried to create safety, the more danger we created. Let me explain this paradox. When you protect children from every possible harm, You communicate something profound. The world is too dangerous for you to handle. You're too fragile to cope without me. Children internalize this message. It becomes their operating system. But there's a deeper mechanism at play. Psychologist Albert Bandura discovered something called self-efficacy. It's your belief in your ability to handle challenges. Self-efficacy doesn't come from being told you're capable. It comes from actually handling challenges successfully. Every time a parent solves a child's problem, they steal an opportunity to build self-efficacy. The child learns, I can't do this, I need rescue. This creates learned helplessness. A concept psychologist, Martin Seligman, discovered through disturbing experiments. Seligman subjected dogs to mild shocks they couldn't escape. Later, when he gave them easy opportunities to escape shocks, they didn't even try. They'd learned they were helpless. Now imagine doing this psychologically to children for 18 years. Every solved problem, every obstacle removed, every discomfort soothed immediately. It teaches, you're helpless, you can't cope, you need constant rescue. Then we send them to college or into careers and wonder why they collapse. But here's what makes this truly tragic. Parents doing this aren't malicious. They're acting from genuine love and concern. They remember their own struggles and pain. They want to spare their children that suffering. This impulse is beautiful. It's also catastrophically misguided. Because struggle isn't something to spare children from. Struggle is how humans develop strength. Think about the butterfly struggling to emerge from its cocoon. If you help it by cutting the cocoon open, the butterfly dies. The struggle to break free is what forces fluid into its wings, giving it the strength to fly. Help the butterfly, kill the butterfly. We're doing this to an entire generation. Author and therapist Lori Gottlieb describes a phenomenon she sees constantly in her practice. Adults in their 20s and 30s who've never experienced significant hardship are completely undone by normal life challenges. A romantic rejection sends them into months of depression. A job setback feels like existential crisis. Criticism from a supervisor triggers thoughts of suicide. These aren't exaggerations. This is what she observes weekly. Gottlieb recalls one patient whose parents had smoothed every possible difficulty. They called professors to dispute grades. They intervened in friend conflicts. They managed every challenge. This patient, now 28, was incapable of basic adulting, couldn't handle conflict at work, couldn't navigate romantic relationships, couldn't cope with the normal frustrations of life. Her exact words, I feel like I'm supposed to be an adult, but nobody taught me how to handle things when they go wrong. Except they did try to teach her. They tried by handling everything for her. That was the teaching. The lesson she learned, I'm incapable. Philosopher and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote extensively about meaning through suffering. He observed that humans who've overcome hardship often report it as the most meaningful period of their lives. Not enjoyable, meaningful. People who've never struggled often report feeling empty despite material comfort. They lack the depth that comes from overcoming challenge. We've created generations optimized for comfort and completely unprepared for meaning. Here's the cruel irony. The generation that had the easiest childhoods reports the lowest life satisfaction and highest rates of depression. Previous generations that experienced genuine hardship, war, poverty, discrimination, show higher resilience and often report greater life satisfaction in retrospect. Not because hardship is good, but because overcoming hardship builds character and capacity that comfort never can. We removed all the small hardships that build strength. Now young adults face normal adult challenges without any psychological muscle. It's like keeping someone in bed for 20 years to protect them from injury, then wondering why they can't walk when you finally let them up. Have you ever noticed that the people who handle major crises best are often those who've weathered minor crises throughout their lives? Now let's examine how this protection philosophy morphed into something even more destructive. Somewhere in the late 1990s, a new cultural script emerged: relentless, positive validation. Every child became special. Every participation earned a trophy. Every attempt deserved praise regardless of outcome. The theory seemed sound: build self-esteem by making children feel valued and appreciated. There was just one problem. It backfired spectacularly. Psychologist Carol Dweck spent decades researching this exact phenomenon. Her findings revolutionized our understanding of motivation and resilience. Dweck discovered that children praised for being smart actually performed worse than children praised for effort. Why? Children praised for being smart developed what she called a fixed mindset. They believed their abilities were innate and unchangeable, so when they encountered difficulty, they quit. Failure meant they weren't actually smart, threatening their entire identity. Children praised for effort developed a growth mindset. They believed abilities could be developed through work. When they encountered difficulty, they worked harder. Failure was information about what to try differently. Same praise. Opposite outcomes. But we ignored this research and doubled down on self-esteem building. By 2010, an entire generation had been raised on constant praise and validation. They'd received trophies just for showing up. They'd been told they were exceptional for meeting basic expectations. Then reality hit. College professors didn't shower them with praise for mediocre work. Employers didn't give trophies for attendance. Romantic partners didn't validate every feeling. The result? Psychological collapse. Students accustomed to constant validation interpreted normal feedback as devastating criticism. They experienced routine challenges as personal attacks. Psychologist Jean Twenge documented this in her research on narcissism rates. Narcissistic personality traits increased dramatically in college students between 1980 and 2010. This wasn't because young people were actually more narcissistic. It was because they'd been conditioned to expect constant validation and interpret its absence as rejection. But here's where it gets darker. When these validation-dependent young adults encountered normal setbacks, they didn't have the psychological tools to cope. So they did what they'd been taught. They sought protection and validation from authority figures. Enter the safe space phenomenon. College campuses began creating elaborate systems to shield students from any potentially uncomfortable ideas or experiences. Trigger warnings before discussing any challenging content. Safe spaces where students could retreat if feeling overwhelmed. Disinvitation campaigns against speakers who might say something upsetting. This might seem like compassion. It's actually the opposite. By treating students as so fragile, they need protection from ideas. Universities reinforce the exact helplessness that created the problem. Clinical psychologist Jonathan Haidt observed this transformation firsthand. He describes visiting campuses where students genuinely believed that hearing opinions they disagreed with was a form of violence. Not metaphorical violence, actual violence that caused them harm. This isn't exaggeration. Students reported physical symptoms, anxiety, inability to focus after merely hearing that someone with different political views would speak on campus. Think about that. Not being forced to attend. Not being personally attacked. Simply knowing someone with different views would speak nearby caused psychological distress. How did we get here? When you tell children they're too fragile to handle discomfort, they believe you. When you remove all challenge from their environment, they never develop the capacity to handle challenge. When you validate every feeling without distinction, they learn that feelings are facts that others must accommodate. The endpoint? Young adults who believe the world must constantly adjust to their emotional state, who interpret disagreement as attack, who experience normal friction as trauma. Philosopher John Stuart Mill warned about this over a century ago. He argued that progress requires the clash of ideas. that truth emerges from vigorous debate, that protecting people from offensive ideas makes them intellectually weak. We ignored his wisdom. We built elaborate systems to protect feelings instead of challenging minds. The result? A generation that knows what they feel but not how to think. That can express outrage but not construct arguments. That seeks validation but not truth. And the tragic irony, this validation-seeking behaviour makes them more anxious, not less. Research shows that people who need constant external validation experience higher anxiety and lower life satisfaction than those with internal locus of control. We created the exact outcome we tried to prevent. When did we start believing that protecting people from discomfort was loving rather than crippling? Everything I've described was bad enough when it only operated in physical reality. Then we handed this psychologically fragile generation the most powerful anxiety amplification device ever created, the smartphone. Social media didn't create these problems. It took existing vulnerabilities and weaponized them. Think about what social media does to someone already trained to need constant validation. Every post becomes a referendum on your worth. Likes are quantified approval. Comments are judgment. Follower count is social value measured precisely. For someone with healthy self-concept, this is manageable. For someone raised to need external validation, it's psychological quicksand. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt and his colleague Greg Lukianoff analysed the timing of mental health deterioration. The inflection point was precise. 2012. That's when smartphone ownership among teens crossed 50%. That's when Instagram usage exploded. That's when constant connectivity became normal. Mental health indicators that had been stable for decades suddenly plummeted. This wasn't coincidence. Researchers from Stanford University conducted revealing experiments. They tracked college students' smartphone usage and correlated it with mental health measures. The findings were stark. Students who checked social media more than 5 times daily showed anxiety levels comparable to people in active crisis situations. But the mechanism is insidious. Social media creates comparison at a scale humans never evolved to handle. Your brain compares your life to perhaps 50 people in your immediate community. That's manageable. Social media makes you compare yourself to thousands, and not reality, but carefully curated highlight reels. Everyone else appears happier, more successful, more attractive, more fulfilled. Your normal life looks pathetic by comparison. This creates what psychologists call the relativity trap. Objective success feels like failure because someone else succeeded more visibly. Got into a good college? Someone you barely know got into Harvard and posted about it. Got a promotion? 3 people you went to high school with just made partner at prestigious firms. Started dating someone? Your ex just got engaged to someone hotter. No achievement feels sufficient because there's always someone doing better publicly. But it gets worse. Social media creates permanent records of every mistake. Something stupid you said at 19 follows you forever. An embarrassing photo from a party years ago resurfaces when you're job hunting. Previous generations could reinvent themselves, move to a new city, start fresh. That's impossible now. Your past is digitally preserved and searchable. For someone already psychologically fragile, this is paralysis-inducing. Every action might create permanent consequences. Every post might be misinterpreted. Every photo might be used against you. The safest option is to do nothing, say nothing, risk nothing, which creates another problem. Development requires risk and experimentation. You discover who you are by trying things, many of which don't work. But when every failed experiment is preserved forever and potentially judged by thousands, the cost of experimentation becomes prohibitive. Young people optimize for safety rather than growth. They curate rather than create. They perform rather than discover. Clinical psychologist Lisa Damour describes treating teenagers who spend hours each day managing their online personas. not using social media, managing how they appear. One patient described spending 40 minutes selecting and editing a single Instagram photo, then experiencing anxiety for hours, waiting to see how people responded. If the post underperformed, feeling devastated. If it succeeded, getting a brief high followed by pressure to maintain that success. This isn't socializing. This is performance anxiety masquerading as connection. Research from King's College London found that adolescents who use social media more than 3 hours daily show double the risk of mental health problems. But here's what's truly devastating. These young people often recognize that social media makes them miserable. They know it's unhealthy, but they can't stop because their entire social infrastructure exists there. Quitting social media means genuine social isolation. It means missing events they're not directly invited to anymore. It means being left out of group chats where plans are made, so they remain trapped in systems that damage them, unable to escape without losing connection entirely. Philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls this the burnout society. Previous generations were oppressed by external forces. This generation oppresses itself through constant self-optimization and comparison. The tyranny is internal and therefore inescapable. We gave psychologically fragile people tools that exploit their exact vulnerabilities. Then we acted surprised when they broke. How many times today have you checked social media out of genuine interest versus compulsive anxiety? But there's an even deeper problem underlying everything we've discussed, something that makes all the other factors worse. This generation faces something historically unprecedented, a complete absence of shared meaning. Let me explain what I mean. Throughout human history, societies provided clear answers to fundamental questions. Why am I here? What should I do with my life? What makes a life worthwhile? Religious traditions provided answers. Cultural narratives provided direction. Community expectations provided structure. You might not like those answers. Many were oppressive and limiting, but they provided psychological scaffolding, a framework for making sense of existence. We demolished that scaffolding. Correctly, in many ways. Tradition often meant conformity. Religious certainty often meant dogmatism. Community expectations often meant suffocating pressure, but we didn't replace what we demolished. We left a void. Modern secular liberal democracy says, figure out your own meaning, create your own values, define your own purpose. This is beautiful in theory. It's psychologically devastating in practice, especially for someone who's never had to struggle, never had to overcome challenges, never developed the internal strength to define themselves. Philosopher Charles Taylor calls this the malaise of modernity. We gained freedom, but lost meaning. Previous generations faced oppressive expectations, but clear purposes. This generation faces infinite possibilities, but no guidance. Psychologist Barry Schwartz documented how excessive choice creates paralysis and dissatisfaction. When you have 3 options, you choose. When you have 300, you freeze. Now apply that to life itself. You can be anything, live anywhere, believe anything, create any identity. This should feel liberating. Instead, it often feels terrifying, because every choice forecloses other possibilities. Every path chosen means infinite paths abandoned. And without clear criteria for what makes one choice better than another, how do you decide? Young adults describe this as the fear of missing out, but it's deeper than that. It's existential anxiety about whether you're living the right life. Previous generations might have hated their lives, but knew they were doing what they were supposed to do. This generation doesn't even have that certainty. Cultural critic David Brooks describes meeting countless young adults who are materially comfortable but spiritually empty. They have jobs, relationships, possessions. They're doing fine by objective measures, but they report feeling hollow. like they're going through motions without understanding why. This emptiness drives much of the anxiety we see. When life lacks inherent meaning, every setback feels catastrophic, because success was the only thing giving life purpose. Remove success, and you're left with nothing. When relationships lack transcendent foundation, every conflict feels relationship ending, because the relationship was held together only by feelings. When feelings falter, nothing remains. When work is just a paycheck rather than a calling, every Monday feels existential, because you're spending your one precious life doing something that doesn't matter. Researcher Emily Esfahani Smith studied happiness versus meaning. She found something remarkable. Happiness comes from getting what you want. Meaning comes from belonging to and serving something larger than yourself. Modern culture optimizes for happiness. We tell young people to find their passion and do what makes them happy. But happiness is fleeting and circumstantial. It can't sustain you through difficulty. Meaning can. Smith found that people with strong sense of meaning report higher life satisfaction even during difficult periods. People optimizing for happiness report lower satisfaction because happiness is so fragile. We raised a generation to seek happiness rather than meaning, then wondered why they collapse when happiness proves elusive. Philosopher Viktor Frankl survived Nazi concentration camps by maintaining meaning despite losing everything. He observed that prisoners who found meaning in their suffering survived. Those who sought only relief died. His conclusion: humans can survive almost anything if they have a why. Without a why, even comfort becomes unbearable. We gave this generation incredible comfort and zero why. Material abundance, unlimited entertainment, constant connectivity, and crushing emptiness. Clinical psychologist Paul Conti describes treating young adults who have everything they thought they wanted and can't understand why they're miserable. They followed the script, got the degree, got the job, got the relationship, got the apartment, and they feel nothing. Or worse, they feel that this can't be all there is. Because it isn't. Comfort isn't purpose. Achievement isn't meaning. Validation isn't significance. But nobody taught them the difference, so they optimize for metrics: Instagram followers, job titles, relationship status, and wonder why success feels hollow. The tragic irony? The protective parenting that tried to ensure success actually prevented the struggles that create meaning. Meaning comes from overcoming challenges in service of something that matters. If you never face challenges and nothing really matters, meaning is impossible. We gave them achievement without adversity and validation without values. Then acted surprised when they reported feeling empty, despite having everything. What gives your life meaning beyond just feeling good? But not every young person is psychologically fragile. Not every family created helplessness. Some got it right. What did they do differently? I've spent years studying families that raised resilient kids despite broader cultural trends. The patterns are consistent and revealing. First, these families distinguished between support and rescue. They supported their children by being emotionally available and providing resources, but they didn't rescue them from natural consequences. Kid forgot lunch? They felt hungry that day. Learned to remember tomorrow? Kid had friend conflict? Parents listened but didn't intervene. Kid learned to navigate relationships. Kid struggled with homework. Parents helped them find resources but didn't do the work. Small failures, natural consequences, developed capability. Second, these families had clear values beyond achievement. They cared about character, not just credentials. Integrity mattered more than GPA. Kindness mattered more than college admissions. This created different incentives. Success meant living according to values, not just accumulating achievements. When setbacks happened, and they always do, these kids had foundation beyond external validation. Third, these families expected contribution. Kids had real responsibilities, chores that mattered to household functioning, jobs starting young, expectations they'd help family and community. This builds competence and purpose. You're not just consuming resources, you're contributing value. Research from University of Minnesota tracked kids with household responsibilities versus those without. 30 years later, those with responsibilities showed higher career success, better relationships, and greater life satisfaction. Not because chores are magical, because responsibility builds capability and self-worth. Fourth, these families embraced productive discomfort. They put kids in situations slightly beyond their comfort zone. New activities, challenging conversations, exposure to different perspectives, not trauma, controlled challenge, enough discomfort to grow without overwhelming. Athletic coach Trevor Ragan studies high-performance development. He found that elite performers across all domains share one thing. They spent childhood being productively uncomfortable regularly. Musicians performed before they felt ready. Athletes competed beyond their current skill. Scholars tackled material above their grade level. This built what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to function effectively while uncomfortable. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, these families modelled resilience themselves. Parents didn't hide their own struggles. They showed kids how adults handle setbacks. They demonstrated coping strategies. They talked about their own failures and what they learned. Kids learned struggling is normal. Adults struggle too, and struggle leads to growth. Researcher Sunia Luther found that children of parents who openly discussed their challenges showed better emotional regulation than children of parents who hid struggles to protect them, because kids need to see struggle normalized, not hidden. These families didn't follow a particular parenting philosophy. They shared an instinct. Children need challenge to develop strength. The results speak for themselves. These young adults navigate setbacks, build meaningful relationships, find purpose. They're not immune to difficulty. They're capable of handling it. The difference isn't genetics or luck. It's approach. We can rebuild what we broke, but only if we're willing to let the next generation struggle. So what do we actually do about this? Whether you're a parent, educator, or young person trying to build resilience, here are strategies backed by research and proven effective. First, redefine your role from protector to coach. Coaches don't play the game for athletes. They prepare athletes to play the game themselves. Parents should do the same. Your job isn't preventing failure, it's preparing kids to handle failure. Practically, this means, before intervening, ask, will this help them develop capability or just prevent discomfort? If it's just preventing discomfort, don't intervene unless there's genuine danger. Let them experience natural consequences. Forgotten homework means lower grade, not parent rushing to school with it. Friend drama gets worked out by kids, not parent calling other parents. Each natural consequence is a lesson that builds judgment. Second, embrace the power of not yet. When kids struggle, replace "you can't do this" with "you can't do this yet." This simple linguistic shift completely changes psychology. Can't implies fixed limitation. Can't yet implies potential through effort. Research shows this dramatically affects persistence. Kids who hear "not yet" try 40% longer on difficult tasks than kids who hear "you can't." Apply this to yourself too. Not "I'm bad at handling stress." Instead, "I haven't developed stress management skills yet." Third, build distress tolerance deliberately. Modern life lets us avoid almost all discomfort. Hungry? Food appears in 30 minutes. Bored? Infinite entertainment. One click away. Lonely? Digital connection on demand. This makes us weak. Deliberately practice discomfort. Physical discomfort builds mental resilience. Cold showers, intense exercise, fasting, meditation. These aren't about suffering. They're about training your nervous system to stay regulated during discomfort. Studies show regular cold exposure reduces anxiety and increases stress resilience by teaching your nervous system that discomfort isn't danger. Fourth, create phone-free time zones. You cannot build resilience while constantly escaping into digital distraction. Designate times and spaces completely free from phones. No checking, no exceptions. Dinner table. First hour after waking. Last hour before sleep. During social interactions. This isn't about being anti-technology. It's about creating space for the boredom and discomfort that spark creativity and self-reflection. Research shows that college students who maintain phone-free study time show 47% better focus and 32% better retention than those who don't. Fifth, pursue meaningful challenge over comfortable achievement. Stop optimizing for things that look good and start pursuing things that forge character. Don't just join clubs for college applications. Do things that genuinely challenge you. Don't just seek jobs with impressive titles. Seek opportunities where you'll struggle and grow. Don't just pursue relationships that feel easy. Build connections that challenge you to become better. Researcher Angela Duckworth studied grit across diverse populations. She found that grit develops through sustained engagement with difficult goals that matter to you. Not just any difficulty, meaningful difficulty, challenge in service of something you care about. Sixth, normalize failure through deliberate practice. Set goals where failure is likely. Treat failure as data, not verdict. Try public speaking if it terrifies you. Attempt creative projects that might flop. Have difficult conversations you'd rather avoid. Each time you survive failure, you prove to yourself that failure isn't fatal. Most importantly, talk about failure. Share your failures. Celebrate lessons learned from failure. Create environments where failure is expected part of growth, not shameful secret to hide. Research shows that teams and families that openly discuss failures show 68% better performance improvement than those that hide failures. The goal isn't to enjoy failure, it's to remove the catastrophic meaning we attach to it. We stand at a crossroads. One path continues what we've been doing, increasing protection, expanding safe spaces, removing more challenges, making life more comfortable and less meaningful. This path leads to greater fragility, more mental health crisis, deeper emptiness. The other path requires courage, courage to let people struggle, courage to allow failure, courage to expect strength instead of assuming weakness. This path is harder. It feels less loving in the moment. Watching someone you care about struggle is painful, but it's the only path that builds genuine capability. Here's what I want you to understand. The fragility we see isn't inevitable. It's not genetic. It's not some mysterious epidemic. It's the predictable outcome of specific choices we made collectively. We chose comfort over challenge, protection over preparation, validation over values. And we got exactly what those choices create. A generation that's comfortable but incapable, protected but paralyzed, validated but empty. But choice works both ways. We can choose differently. Starting now. Starting with the next decision. The next time someone you care about faces challenge, resist the urge to intervene. Sit with the discomfort of watching them struggle. Trust that struggle builds strength. The next time you face discomfort yourself, lean into it instead of escaping. Use it as opportunity to build resilience. The next time you're tempted to seek validation, seek meaning instead. Ask not, will this make me happy? But will this build character? Psychologist Carol Dweck reminds us that we're always sending messages about what we believe people are capable of. When we protect people from challenge, we message, you're not capable of handling this. When we expect them to handle challenge, we message, you're stronger than you think. People rise or fall to our expectations. The young people struggling right now aren't weak. They're responding rationally to how they were prepared for life. They weren't prepared. Now we need to help them build strength retrospectively. And the generation being raised right now, we have a chance to do better. Not by being harsh or uncaring, but by being wise enough to know that true caring sometimes means allowing struggle. Author Glennon Doyle writes, "We can do hard things." But you only learn this by doing hard things, not by being protected from hard things. The question isn't whether life will be hard. Life is hard. That's not optional. The question is whether we'll prepare people to handle the hardness, and that preparation doesn't happen through protection. It happens through progressive challenge, through learning that you're capable, through discovering that struggle precedes strength. We broke something important in how we raise humans, but what's broken can be repaired. It starts with one uncomfortable truth acknowledged, one protective impulse resisted, one challenge embraced instead of avoided. The generation we're raising deserves better than our fear disguised as love. They deserve the chance to discover their own strength, and that discovery only happens through struggle we're brave enough to allow. Are you brave enough?